Springfield's Talk 1041. Good. Halfway through the week, Wednesday it is. Oh, what is this? This is a nice little graphic on the weather here that you printed up this morning. It's gonna rain. It's gonna rain. Yeah, we are looking at a chance of rain making its way into the area into the overnight hours. We will get into that. Some thunderstorms possible over the next couple of days, so we'll, like I said, run through that with you coming up here in just a couple of moments. But I wanted to start off Joe Biden. I mentioned yesterday that what has clearly become the plan is not just to try and, to use the power of the government to interfere in the election by way of, as much as possible, preventing Donald Trump from being out there campaigning. Taking advantage of that, additionally, by getting Joe Biden out there. We all know that when he ran against Trump the first time, he hid in the basement. And while this was assessed by, I think, most people as something that was being done by the campaign because of his cognitive decline, you look at then compared to today, and he did seem sharp as a tack back then compared to the way that he is today. And so you think, but, okay, well, he was hidden in the basement last time around. Why do they, he's out there on the campaign trail. He's making several stops a day. He's out there. Yes, he's out there. He doesn't have these big crowds, but this is part of the point. I don't believe that the primary reason for keeping Joe Biden off the campaign trail last time was just because of cognitive issues, but it was the fear of the compare and contrast, the side-by-side visuals of here's Joe Biden with a room of 30 individuals that look very bored, and at the same time, here's Donald Trump. People waited in line for 10 hours to see him, and he filled an arena with 120,000 people that were wildly ecstatic to see him, and just the side-by-side. And that was something that was prevalent in the 2016 election against Hillary Clinton. I think that at the time they dismissed it, but in retrospect, they saw that it could have even fed itself a little bit. It fed the excitement of Trump supporters, making Trump supporters believe, hey, there's a real chance here that Donald Trump can win. And a fear of repeating that with Joe Biden in 2020, when that race took place, is part of the reason that they kept him in the basement, to prevent once again seeing the momentum on Trump's side. Well, now what they are offering up the news is, all right, here's Joe Biden out on the campaign trail, and while they aren't these big events with cheering people, the media is able to juxtapose it with Donald Trump in a courtroom. Now, even though Donald Trump, of course, in the time that he is able to, is still out there having rallies, most of the time they're in the evening because the Democrats are keeping him tied up in court during the day, and they'll throw him in jail if he doesn't show up for court. And the coverage, all of the Trump coverage that they have now, or that they're focusing on now, is him in court. So this allows Joe Biden to be out there on the campaign trail because, again, even though these campaign stops, we can look at them and we see these are unenthusiastic crowds, and he was having to read off a note card about himself and why he got into yesterday at a campaign event. He once again falsely claimed that he got his start during the civil rights that era in which there was the civil rights struggle, and that was his first involvement in politics, which isn't true whatsoever. In fact, in the past, he's talked about the fact that he was not part of any of that, but this is one of the new lies that he consistently tells. But he's having to read it off a note card. His own, quote, experience about himself. I mean, if somebody asks you, I get asked this every so often, so how'd you start in radio? I don't need note cards to tell you this. Point being, however, as indicative that these campaign trail stops by the Biden campaign are of his cognitive decline and a lack of enthusiasm. The media is able to then cover Trump in court, as opposed to Trump out there on the campaign trail, because they've got to cover Trump. And if the only thing Trump is doing is campaigning, then that's what they're going to have to cover. And of course, and Trump mocked them in the past because of how they would do tight shots so as to not show the crowd. And he would taunt them live and tell the cameras, turn around, pan around. And so it forced the exposure to some degree of the success of the campaign, the excitement, the enthusiasm. But now, see, the Democrats are it's all coming together. They're giving their people in the media the footage. They are giving them, all right, here now, this is what you do when you talk about Trump. Here's Biden on the campaign trail, here's Trump. So the side-by-sides are a far cry from what they feared 4 years ago of enthusiastic stadiums from Donald Trump, and then these embarrassing little visits to small shops and wherever it is that the Biden people go. Now, I know what you're saying. You go, yeah, but Trump's still out there. We see it. But what they're concerned about is the people who aren't necessarily followers of Trump, the people who get their news from the mainstream media. Those are the individuals that they are looking to craft this disinformation campaign and utilize the ability to keep Trump tied into court in order to sort of craft this sense and this feeling that, here Joe Biden, he's out there making things happen as president. He's sharp as a tack, running circles around everything. And then tired, old Donald Trump, frustrated, broken, tired man in court. And if you listen to the way that the media talks about him in court, that's exactly what they're saying. MSNBC or CNN, we played that, they continue to trot these people out, and there's a campaign ad of a steel worker talking about Joe Biden, and meeting the guy sharp as a tack. I mean, it's hard to keep up with him. He's got such amazing energy. Then those same networks talk about Donald Trump in court, and he seems tired. His shoulders are hunched over forward like he's a defeated man. This is all setting the stage. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Latest news update. First Alert Forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49. Meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly cloudy, a high near 73 today with a 50% chance of rain throughout the night. A low of 52, 80% chance of showers and storms tomorrow, 61 for a high. And Friday, a 90% chance of showers and thunderstorms, high near 73. Friday, we are going to have a Heroes Breakfast at Scramblers, that Friday Road Show at Scramblers, sponsored by Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair. And then, if you are a veteran, come on by between 6A and 9A. Get yourself free breakfast at Scramblers. That, thanks to Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Serenity Honors, Delta Roofing, and Scramblers. And then at 10 a.m. at KSGF.com, your chance, local for less Ozarks, you can purchase a $50 gift certificate to Scramblers for only $25. That will be 10 a.m. sharp at KSGF.com. Mm-hmm. Joe Biden yesterday, I got some audio. He brought back an oldie but a goodie.
Is it the semi truck?
It is the semi truck. Yesterday, Joe Biden.
I used to drive an 18-wheeler. You know what I did? That's exactly right.
I used to drive an 18-wheeler, he glazed. You can even, when you see the video, you can see that everyone's uncomfortable. And by everyone, there's half a dozen people there. They're uncomfortable because they know that this is not true. And he continues to claim this. Now, the best cleanup that has been done with this, I guess it's a lie. We don't know. This is, again, what happens when you're dealing with somebody that has dementia, cognitive decline, senility. You don't know if they're lying or if they actually believe it. You don't know. He may have watched a movie in the last couple of years or had a dream where he was a truck driver, and he might believe it. We just don't know. But he continues to make this claim. Now, the White House, I think it was either the White House or the campaign, someone on his behalf at one point said, well, 50 years ago he rode in a 18-wheeler, and that's really not the same. No, not the same. That's like Pete Buttigieg. Well, I rode in a train, so I should be transportation director. These people take wild leaps, don't they? Pete Buttigieg rode in a train, should be transportation secretary. You got Joe Biden. He rode in an 18-wheeler. That, in his mind, translates to I used to drive. Not even claiming once I drove. He's like, I used to. I used to be an 18-wheeler driver. Yep, just driving the countryside. I wish someone would ask him. I genuinely wish someone would ask him when he next time makes this claim. What did you haul? I'd love to hear what he would say.
Cattle?
Yeah, I don't know if he would say I don't remember, which would be an interesting response because that would make sense. He wouldn't remember because he never actually did it. But would he connect those dots?
I feel like he'd make something up.
Well, he could do that. Because if he did say, I don't remember, would he connect the dots to the fact that he doesn't remember? Would he try to visualize it? Well, let me see. Let me try to remember loading up or being there as they loaded up and then recognize, well, I don't remember actually that happening. And wait a minute. Now that I think about it, I don't actually ever remember. It's a weird phenomenon because he clearly has issues with his mind. And instead of forgetting things, which he does oftentimes, he remembers things that never happened. Or would he just immediately, make something up? And if so, I wonder what he would make up. This is why I wish someone would ask him this question. The sense that I get is that if he made it up, it would be something to make him sound amazing, right? Like he was hauling some life-saving something or other when no one else could do it. I don't know. I'm not sure. But please, if someone ever has the opportunity, and the odds of the stars aligning, that he probably will tell this story again. All he has to do. Maybe he'll come around and tour Prime or something in the area. Maybe he'll think he's yesterday claiming Florida's in play. So maybe he thinks Missouri's in play as well. I mean, you think, well, he's not going to come to Missouri. There's no point. He's not going to win Missouri. He's not going to waste his time in Missouri. He's going to spend time in places like Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, these states that he has to win. But he's claiming that Florida's in play. So if he believes that Florida is in play, then he may believe that Missouri's, because he was in Florida, right? He's been in Florida. He's down there campaigning. So maybe he'll come by. Maybe he'll hit Springfield area. He'll hit Prime, and then he won't be able to help himself if he sees trucks. He's going to be he's going to say, I used to drive. What was your handle? What was your CB handle? I'd want to know that. And then what did you haul? So if somebody just, if those stars align and somebody listening now happens to be in the handpicked audience that is there to be the recipient of these Walter Mitty style stories, then I just please ask that question. To hear the answer. He also, and this was again at the same event where he falsely claimed that reading off note cards, he got his start in politics, fighting for civil rights and so forth. Something he himself has in the past claimed wasn't true. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Joe Biden once again made the disproven claim that he used to drive an 18-wheeler. And so we were discussing how great it would be if someone asked what he was hauling. What would he say? Would he get confused, fumble? He's like, oh, I don't remember. Would he just throw out something random? We figure that if he were to make something up, it would be something that made him sound really good. Some of your suggestions. Didn't you hear Biden hauled atomic bombs and life-saving cancer drugs all on the same loads, all at the same time? Another, Biden hauled either nuclear waste weapons or top-secret cargo for the military. That's like Elizabeth Warren being a Native American after watching a cowboy show. That's reference to the fact that the cleanup crew for Biden, the first time he made up the lie, said, well, he rode in a truck once 50 years ago. Oh. One of you texting in, I bought something with $1, so I am a millionaire. He thinks he's Jerry Reed and Smokey and the Bandit. And another saying, hey, Joe, what did you haul? He hauled cannibals. Because, the people who ate his uncle. Speaking of, Papua New Guinea Prime Minister angrily slams Joe Biden over the cannibal claim. I wondered if this wasn't going to happen. And when Biden made this absurd claim that people ate his uncle, which of course wasn't true, and that they were folks from Papua New Guinea, this was a public statement. So my first thought was the way the media went apoplectic and pop culture. When Donald Trump was said, I don't even think, if I remember right, these comments were public, but it came out that he said, why is it that he referenced some of these, like Haiti, as blank holes. Remember that? And they all went nuts over it. How horrible it was, how arrogant it was, how awful it was to have the president of the United States, characterize, whether it was warranted or not, some other country in such a negative way. I mean, they just pitched fits over it. And again, I don't even think that those were public comments. Those were private comments, supposedly, that had to do with, I don't know, discussion of foreign aid or whatever the situation was. And then it leaked out, and so it was an opportunity to just talk about what a horrible and here he is. You've got all these countries that look to the United States of America and the president characterizing certain countries that way. And so then here you have Joe Biden characterizing Papua New Guinea as a country filled with people that will eat your uncle. And I thought, well, okay, of course, I knew there would be no outrage by the media, and there is no coverage other than I found in Breitbart that the Papua New Guinea Prime Minister is hopping mad that Joe Biden is characterizing that nation as one filled with cannibals. Marape said in a statement issued to the Associated Press, President Biden's remarks may have been a slip of the tongue. However, my country does not deserve to be labeled as such. You really do wish you could create these parallel timelines. We know the answer to the rhetorical question, but still, if Donald Trump had made up a story falsely claiming that his uncle had been eaten by cannibals and he specifically blamed a particular country for it, can you imagine? I mean, and he said it publicly. I mean, they falsely claim because he noted accurately that many of the people who come into this country illegally are murderers and rapists. They took that and said that what he was actually doing is claiming that all Mexicans were rapists and murderers, and they still use that to this day. Joe Biden's like, Papua New Guinea, people, cannibals, ate my uncle. And they're just like, that's just Joe. That's just Joe. He was just really excited. And he had such great respect for his uncle, just naturally when you're talking about a dead family member that you have an emotional reaction to. You falsely claim that people from some other country ate him. I mean, who doesn't do that, right? Especially when you're sharp as a tack. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, mostly cloudy, 73 today, a 50% chance of rain overnight tonight, low of 52, 80% chance. Showers and storms tomorrow, high near 61, so much cooler. 73 on Friday with a 90% chance of showers and thunderstorms, high near 73. All right, a couple more of your text messages on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line before we shift to something else. We've been talking about Joe Biden in Florida yesterday, and I don't know what is more delusional. He once again lied about being a former driver of an 18-wheeler, but he also said that Florida's in play. Maybe he's got a crystal ball that I don't. But the 18-wheeler thing definitely didn't happen, and we were discussing if someone just would once ask him, because he continues to tell this lie, what was your haul? What did you haul? And we've gotten some great answers, and someone said that he might respond with sailboat fuel. Another said, I hear that Biden is going to pick a day in May to be Take a Cannibal to Lunch Day. That from Hank in Florida. Oh, Hank, Biden's down there in your state. Maybe you can make I guess he's got the inside info there. Take a Cannibal to Work Day. Here's a new game. What will Joe make up next? I invented the internet before Al Gore. And then this is, I don't know why I find this so funny. If Joe Biden were a bird, he'd fly into a ceiling fan.
I think it's because it's accurate.
Yeah, I know. That is it, because you're like, it's not necessarily funny because it's overly clever, but because there's truth to it. If he were, and then he would do it again and again, and then he would tell you that's how one of his baby birds died. All right. I want to shift to a story that actually is, I don't know how old. I mean, not too terribly old, but it may have happened while we were on The Great Escape. And bookmarked the story, and then there have been a few subsequent stories, and it has to do with another one of these instances in which a male student that identified as a female student has obviously, despite lack of scientific studies, the physical upper hand and just beat another student, in this case with a Stanley Cup. Now, the Stanley Cups, of course, most of you know these, they're very heavy, they're very durable, they're metal. The Stanley Cups have been around for a very long time, but they got this massive resurgence because of this video that went viral. I think the girl who was in the car accident made it herself. Remember that? You know what I'm talking about, where that girl was in the car accident, and I think her car was totaled, but her Stanley Cup was perfectly intact. I think she's the one who made the video about it, and it went viral. And
Is that the one where the car caught on fire?
Yeah, I think that's what
yeah.
it was, and so that's why it's just Black Swan, but for the good, for Stanley Cup. Can you imagine? You're a company, and you pay these people for marketing, and you spend all this money on advertising. And then something so random happens, and it is the single greatest thing, marketing-wise, that has happened to your company, totally out of left field, beyond your control. It's just, those things amaze me when that occurs. So now, so these Stanley Cups, it's just this massive introduction to a brand new audience, if you will, out there, and they become extremely popular. So it's not, if you had a year ago talked about kids in school having Stanley Cups, you would think that, oh, this is a thermos that someone found that their grandpa's stuff or so, but now Stanley Cups, they're very commonplace. And so this guy in school who identified as a girl just beat relentlessly a girl with one of these Stanley Cups. Now, the reason that this story is relevant in the context of the offender being transgender is this student was very open about the fact. In fact, made a hit list. Verbally told these students, I'm going to kill you. Students went to school administrators and were ignored. And I think it is a completely fair assessment to when wondering why on earth would, in this day and age in particular, if you have a student openly telling, here are the ones I'm going to get, you're one of them, here's a listing, why would in this day and age that be ignored? And it is a perfectly reasonable conclusion that it's because the student was transgender. Well, we don't want to, be transphobic. We don't want to play into the stereotype that transgender students are dangers to other students. One of the 13-year-old girls who was a witness to this horrific incident spoke about it before the school board meeting. I believe this was last week.
Wednesday morning, I went to the guidance counselor and told her, since I was second on the hit list, knowing that there was something going to happen, because there was a girl she was targeting every day at lunch. And they would go to the counselor and tell them every day that this is going to happen. And Wednesday, I went with two others, and each of us filled out a whole paper full of what's going to happen and why it's going to happen. And then I went to chorus and I was told, watch your back. He is going to come for you and this other girl at lunch. And when I was at lunch, I was terrified, and I told Miss Fattori that was happening, and she said, don't worry about it, it's not going to happen. But, early that morning, I was told I was not going to see Mel for the rest of that week. But I was in lunch, and all of a sudden I just hear all this screaming and everybody running. And I see Mel running in after somebody, and everyone's screaming and running. But the girl who got attacked didn't see it because she was faced backwards. And all of a sudden you just hear these terrible, loud bangs of the Stanley bouncing off her head. And then you see Mel grabbing her hair and hitting her against the table and just repeatedly hitting her with the Stanley. There was blood going everywhere. I was the table right behind it. And all you see is blood everywhere. And it was just, and then you say in your email that it was 8 minutes, but we timed it. It was 28 minutes. And we had to sit in there and watch them clean up her blood off those tables and ground. And we had to watch them take her out with blood dripping down her face. And I will never forget that. And laying in bed last night, I just kept repeating it in my head, and we shouldn't have had to sit there and just watch them clean up her blood with the mop, watch her repeatedly yelling that I'm gonna murder you and just hitting her with the Stanley. And I don't get how, you couldn't have stopped it. It was 5 hours from when I told you it was gonna happen and when it happened. It was 5 whole hours. I don't get how you couldn't have stopped that. And how Ms. Fattori said, don't worry, it's not gonna happen. We have her under control. But clearly you didn't.
Now, she says, I don't get how you couldn't have stopped it. They could have stopped it. They chose not to. This is reminiscent of the horrific situation that occurred in Loudoun County that began bringing a lot of focus to the fact that so many public schools cover up for violent offenders if they are transgender. That was a situation in which, despite warnings, red flags, concerns from other students, a transgender, which the guy, the rapist in the Loudoun County School District's own mother said he doesn't actually even identify as a girl. He just wears a dress so he can go follow girls into the restroom. And after the rape, of course, the school tried to cover it up and then just bounced him to another school where there was another sexual assault. This is an instance where this student, this male, according to the reports, was only in this school. This was this student's third day at this school. And there were stories circulating that he had been kicked out of his previous school. Now, they're saying, no, that's not true. But these districts have lied about this stuff before. And it's always this instinct But I want to be clear. This isn't a story about, oh, well, transgenders are all dangerous. That's not what this is. What this story is about is when there is a student that identifies as transgender that is making threats, there is this instinct to not do anything about it. There is this instinct to cover for them, to make excuses for the individual. And it's all in the name of, DEI, political correctness. We don't want to trigger. We don't want to be transphobic. We have to be accepting. If the transgender student is acting out, making threats, it's because, of course, you're the oppressor, and the transgender student is in the oppressed classification, and you need to understand where they're coming from. And it doesn't matter even if you have a situation where a guy who claims to be a girl in schools is openly threatening to murder students and has a hit list out. And as was noted in this case, went to school officials, went to teachers, told, oh, don't worry about it. It's not going to happen. How many times does this have to occur? And let me tell you what this also does is it sends a signal, to students that, generally speaking, if they're transgender, it's because they have mental health issues, that they have a free pass. They know they have free reign. This is in the Philadelphia school, incidentally. And in the Philadelphia school district, anyhow, that you can, if you're a guy, and as long as you claim you're a girl, you can make a hit list. You can openly talk about it. You can openly threaten to murder other students. And as long as you're transgender, they ain't going to do a thing about it. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Well, we have multiple rounds of thunderstorms that are expected to roll through the listening area in the next couple of days. And if your roof is not ready for that next round of rain, wind, hail, I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they're not going to take advantage of you whenever a storm rolls through the area. They're not going to use scare tactics on you, and they're not going to try to upsell you or just do unnecessary work. Their whole goal is to provide you with the best solution for you and your home. And, sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean a whole new roof, but maybe just a simple roof repair. Whatever the roofing needs are for your home, you can trust that the Pyramid team, they are going to get you all taken care of. So if it is time to go ahead and schedule that free roof inspection, you can give Josh and his team a call today. You can find all of that contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
The story, the last segment we were talking about, playing the audio of the 13-year-old girl talking to the school board about the fact that in the school there was a male who apparently had only been a student there. This was the student's third day, and he made a hit list already and was open with the other middle school students about it. This was at a middle school in Philadelphia, and had told some yeah, I'm going to murder you. And the teachers were told, administrators, students were begging, please do something about this. And they did nothing. And I suspect they did nothing because the student identified as transgender. And before day's end, took a Stanley Cup. And one of the other middle school students that was on the hit list, apparently number one, bashed in the head until she was hospitalized. When facing the judge ordered that the juvenile be detained at the youth center. The male student grabbed a nearby water jug, swung it at a deputy, and resisted being handcuffed. This is another, and this is where, if you want, some may disagree with this description, but an aspect of this in which you could arguably say that the transgender student is the victim is the fact that because there is this refusal to acknowledge that transgender students have mental issues. And so by default, whenever you have a individual who clearly has mental issues and is threatening to kill other students, oh, don't worry, because, this person's transgender. They can't have mental issues. So don't worry about it. It won't happen. Because only mentally ill people do those sorts of things. And transgenderism isn't a mental illness. So therefore, this student isn't mentally ill. Therefore, this student won't actually do it. That's the twisted thinking that the left has created. And it doesn't matter to them that it leaves young girls hospitalized. It doesn't matter to them that it leaves young people dead. We saw with the Nashville shooter. This similar instinct to cover for the individual. There are still attempts, despite judges' orders, to keep the manifesto hidden. There was this, what would have been another transgender shooting that occurred. And again, this isn't to say every individual who's transgender is a danger. But many of the particularly young people who are in school that have mental issues, what the go-to for so many of these schools in the left is, well, if you have mental issues, that's because you're actually transgender. That's what they tell them. If they are, if they feel isolated, if they are depressed, if they have these conflicting feelings of violence, if they, all of this stuff, they say, well, it's just because you're transgender, see. That's what's going on here. This is the cure to all that ails you. And so then they become transgender. Well, all you've done is taken somebody that needs real, true help. And instead of getting them help, you falsely convince them that they'll be better as long as they identify as the opposite gender. And then, frankly, it makes things worse because then people that they trusted and told them here's the answer to feeling better and to no longer having these issues, they find out that it wasn't true. So you add the sense of betrayal and hopelessness on top of it. They make it worse. Transgender suspect charged with plotting to carry out a mass shooting in Maryland school was evidently partly inspired by the trans-identifying Covenant school shooter, according to a copy of the charging document obtained by Town Hall. 18-year-old student Andrea Alex Yee, a female who identified as a male, authored a 129-page manifesto where she fawned over and compared herself to Audrey Hale, who slaughtered 6, including 3 children at the Christian elementary school in Nashville. You think about the people and the individuals in this country that we're told we're supposed to be so afraid of. And then you look at the instances in which there are some clear patterns emerge, and then you have individuals that are taking inspiration from other people within their same category. And not only are we not supposed to see that as signs of concern, but we have to do the opposite and claim that anyone who says, you know what, maybe there's something wrong emotionally with these young people that need help, instead of just throwing the transgender thing at them and telling them that's going to make everything okay, that if you suggest that, you're transphobic. The unnecessary, inhumane tragedies that are being created out of this leftist ideology of trying to crank up the numbers of transgenders in the stats by taking mentally ill students and convincing them, oh, this is what your problem is. Just change your pronoun and you'll be all better. And if not, it's because of these other kids around you, these oppressors. And so then they, of course, give them a target. And we're seeing the results increasingly. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Hey, if you need a home loan, well, there are lots of places you can do that. But if you want a great home loan, it's the Carricker team right here in Springfield. And it all starts at iwantagreathomeloan.com. And the site itself has more than just getting started. There's a lot of information that might help you formulate the answer as to, is this the right time or not? Or might lead you towards questions you didn't even know you needed to ask, and then you can reach out further for the expertise of the Carrickers and their team. And it all starts for those home loan needs or refinancing needs at iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Wilder RV. Just a bit over an hour drive, straight shot 13 up to Clinton, Missouri. Incredible inventory, incredible people. In fact, from all over the country, Wilder RV is a destination place for purchasing new RVs from RVers, again, all across the country. And we're so fortunate to have it just an hour, just a little over an hour outside of Springfield, given that people from all over the country purchase their RVs there. I really do not like to feel as if people are, quote, selling me. It's just one of the, and I know everyone's different. I don't like people following me around. I like, I'm so-and-so. Do you need it? Okay. Well, if you need me, we'll be over here. I like that sort of thing. And Wilder RV is very hands-off. Some of these places that you go to, they're all locked. And you can't look inside without somebody there. They've got keys. They open it up. Maybe they'll follow you in or they'll stand outside waiting for you. And it's just, that's not how it is at Wilder RV. You can, they may ask you, they probably will, okay, do you have a family? What are you looking to do? And they'll say, okay, this area way over there or this area back over here, that's probably where you want to start. We'll be back here. Let us know if you need anything, and you don't have to have somebody with keys following you to unlock stuff. WilderRV.com, Clinton, Missouri, and, of course, you can find them KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements. WNBA star Angel Reese, protect young women in sports. Oh. Now, this isn't getting a great deal of attention because it brings conflicting worlds up against one another. Angel Reese, former LSU national champion, who was a top selection WNBA draft last week, put out this simple post about women in sports on Monday. The new Chicago Sky star urged followers and anyone who reads her post on X to protect young women in sports. The post came days after the Biden administration unveiled new rules aimed at safeguarding LGBTQ plus students, sacrificing female students in order to do so, of course, students and athletes and so forth. Prior to this, of course, I'm not one that follows sports. I'm particularly not one that follows college sports. But I've been aware of Angel Reese because of the rivalry that had been going on, and there has been what's her Caitlin? What's her name? Caitlin. The white one, okay? You know what I'm talking about. This is how out of the loop. But
You're asking the wrong person.
The funny thing is I even actually watched the last part of that game a couple weekends ago. Caitlin Clark, isn't that what her name is? I believe. So there was this sort of rivalry going on between the two on the court, but then along political lines, because any sort of comparison in which Caitlin Clark would be argued was the classier player or more positive in certain ways, people would say, well, there's racism at play here, that Angel Reese is getting the shaft when it comes to this sort of thing because she's black and Caitlin Clark is white. And so that's something that has on social media been prevalent. Some commentators have talked about this. And that, of course, then creates ideological lines where you have people who are on the left that will just default to being a supporter of Angel Reese, being a defender of Angel Reese, because they felt as if she was the oppressed when it came to this rivalry. The same time, however, the left is supportive of forcing girls to compete against boys. Because, the hierarchy is it's always maneuvering and changing. And when it comes to just straight up black versus white is the oppressor, black is the oppressed. But when it comes to girls and then guys who claim they're girls girls are the oppressor, and guys who claim to be girls are the oppressed to the left. So to have Angel Reese, who white versus black is the oppressed, but then as a girl is the oppressor to boys who claim to be girls, come out and and say, hey, no, we need to protect girls. Girls sports, girls in sports, that's what we need to protect. It creates this sort of conflict for a lot of those people who have been supporters of her for political purposes. And I suspect that's when the story first comes out, when this sort of thing occurs, one of two reactions results. Either there's crazy outrage, or what generally occurs is there's silence because they don't know what to do. The people on the left, who are the ones that generally pitch the biggest, loudest fits over these things, they don't know what to do because they have been her champion for this long period of time, and now she's coming out and saying this, so it's like, where do we fall on this? And it's one of the reasons that there hasn't been a great deal of coverage of it, and I suspected there wouldn't be, but I thought it was an interesting story. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I am Nick Reed. Weather in a moment. Rain on the way. Thunderstorms possible as well. First, the latest news. First alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly cloudy, high near 73 today, 50% chance of rain throughout the night tonight, low of 52, 80% chance of showers and storms tomorrow, only 61 for the high, a bit warmer Friday, 73 with a 90% chance of showers and thunderstorms. Friday Road Show, Scramblers, sponsored by Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair. We will be there this Friday. And it's a Heroes Breakfast, so if you are a veteran, come by. You're going to get free breakfast. That thanks to Scramblers, of course, Delta Roofing, Serenity Honors, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, and then at 10 a.m. at KSGF.com, you can get quite a deal. $50 gift certificate to Scramblers for only $25. How's that for a deal? They will go fast, so be ready at 10 a.m. Should be top of mind for you because you'll be out there with us at Scramblers. Emily Johnson should be out there with us as well, so of course take advantage of that opportunity. If you have any questions about the housing market, so many of the questions that I find from people who are thinking about purchasing a new home or thinking about selling their home, and oftentimes both. Maybe you are in an area like Springfield, you want to get out of Springfield, or maybe your family is getting bigger or smaller, whatever the reason may be, but you just don't know, is right now the right time? Should I wait? Ask her that question, and she's going to ask you some questions, I'm sure, as well, because it will largely depend on your particular situation. So she will, again, most likely be with us at Scramblers on Friday, around 8:15, sometime in that area. And, of course, you can always reach out to her. You can find her at ksgf.com, Nick's endorsements, social media, Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. On the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. The text in this text, I believe, is in response to some of the audio that was played with our town hall news at the top of the hour, and you hear quotes from Chuck Schumer and then Mitch McConnell regarding the funding for everyone else except for our border security, of course. And I heard some of these sound bites yesterday, and my first thought when I heard Mitch McConnell is the difference between Republican voters and Democrat voters when it comes to having elected leaders that clearly need to go, and Democrats, for whatever reason, and we see this with Biden, the more senile he is, the more that they support him. Whereas Mitch McConnell, Republican voters have been saying for a very long time, get this guy the hell out of there. Get gone. We want him gone. The text message saying Schumer and McConnell give the same speech about how great of a world leader they are because we agreed to send $60 billion to Ukraine. I guess their definition of leadership is giving money to other people to do everything risky and make all the decisions of what to do and how to do it. What else do you expect from politicians? This is the exact problem with government. They think problems are solved by spending money without actually doing anything. What I thought was, well, it's a quote that we should keep and remember. It's Chuck Schumer claiming that this is the moment that Putin has received the message that it's over, that the United States, that we're dealing essentially the death blow to this, that this is the moment that he will realize that he's on the wrong side of all this. Now, to me, that is a message that this is all that's going to be needed, right? I mean, if Chuck Schumer is out there saying this is it, this is the moment, then we can all rest assured they aren't going to ask us as taxpayers to spend any more money in Ukraine? Because this is the final, this is it? The Federalist has a piece. Johnson didn't cave on Ukraine funds because of intel briefings. This is the go-to response so often when lawmakers, particularly Republicans, that portray themselves as fiscally responsible and also portray themselves as supporting your liberties and your freedoms against spying from our own government and so forth, then they come back out when they flip-flop and they're like, oh, well, I was shown an intel briefing. The intel briefing excuse is an excuse that is used as a get-out-of-jail-free card for flip-flopping. You claim that you are, and this is Johnson, that the only way that any of this sort of funding was going to happen is if our border security was taken care of first. It was USA first, our border security first, and then he flip-flopped. And it's like, oh, well, Oh, I was shown some intel, so that's why. And you know the brilliant thing about that excuse is, but I can't tell you what it is. Isn't that fantastic? What a great weapon to be able to use against the American people. Any reason you decide to go back on your word, or whether it was a lie to begin with, or you changed your mind for whatever reason, whether it's because somebody has something over you, or you've been promised something, or even maybe just noble reasons. All you have to do is say, well, I saw some information you didn't see, and by the way, I can't tell you what it is. You just have to trust me. This is government. This is Mike Johnson saying, I'm from the government, trust me. After the quick break, I want to share with you some of this piece. Johnson didn't cave on Ukraine because of intel briefings. John Daniel Davidson has a piece. Johnson did not cave on Ukraine funds because of intel briefings. Now, this, of course, something with great fanfare. The Senate has passed. Biden will sign it, though no word as to whether or not Democrats in the Senate were waving Ukrainian flags as they did in the House, apparently forgetting which country it is that they are elected to represent. Davidson writes that Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson is now being feted by the likes of Politico and the New York Times for selling out Republican voters and working with Democrats to pass a foreign aid package last week that will send tens of billions more taxpayer dollars to Ukraine. If you recall, this is something Johnson repeatedly vowed he would not do until Democrats agreed to secure the southern border. He said this over and over and over, both before and after he became Speaker. So what explains Johnson's about face? According to a fawning piece in Politico, it was, quote, sobering briefings that he received after becoming Speaker. Politico writing that it was the intelligence, it was the Europe generals who were in charge of the freedom of the world, and of course it was the developments as well. Everything has escalated, he told the outlet. Johnson gave a similar line to the Times, quote, I really do believe the intel. I think that Vladimir Putin would continue to march through Europe if he were allowed. I think he might go to the Baltics next. I think he might have a showdown with Poland or one of our NATO allies. He said the same thing to CNN's Jake Tapper last week, that he wants to make sure Putin doesn't march through Europe. Notice now that Johnson has helped pass the Democrats' agenda. He's become a darling of the corporate press, complete with an in-depth puff profile just published in The Atlantic. Never mind that the Putin will march through Europe line was hard to believe when it was trotted out over 2 years ago. Today it's preposterous and indefensible, and no one really believes it. And by the way, I should note here, that doesn't mean that they don't believe that's something that he wouldn't want to do. But he is completely and utterly bogged down in Ukraine. Now, it's not as if Ukraine, and this has become pretty clear, that they are winning either. There's a stalemate. How we are supposed to believe that a country that is at a complete and utter stalemate in Ukraine somehow is going to march across Europe? Today, it's preposterous and indefensible. No one really believes it. Even on the ground, or events rather on the ground, have demonstrated pretty conclusively that Moscow can't even secure all the territory it claims to have annexed in eastern Ukraine, let alone march on Poland or other NATO members. So what exactly did Johnson find out in these classified briefings? How did he go into a SCIF, which is a secure facility used for classified briefings, with one set of priorities and come out with a completely different one? Did he learn that Ukraine was running out of weapons? Well, we've all known that for some time. The Pentagon said that in January. Did he learn that the military recruitment in Ukraine is collapsing? That's been widely reported for months. You don't need a SCIF or a sit-down with the CIA to know any of that. You just have to watch the news. Maybe then it was something worse, that Moscow is planning to use a nuclear weapon of some kind. If, as Politico puts it, it only took a higher level of intelligence briefings granted to congressional leaders for him to pick up that old Cold War hymnal, then Johnson should come out and explain as much to the American people. We're all adults. We can handle it. We deserve to know where our billions are going and why. That is the crux of it. If what Johnson learned in his intelligence briefing was so dire, so terrifying, that he went from opposing $300 million from Ukraine in September to happily giving $61 billion for the country last week, then he needs to come out and explain himself. Because that's a hell of a 180 to pull on an issue that has deeply divided the Republican Party. A majority of Johnson's own conference voted against the foreign aid package. But suppose Johnson did find out something in this SCIF, some new intelligence about an apocalyptic threat that changed his entire perspective on the war and inspired him to repudiate all of his past views on America's role. The proper response in that case would have been to immediately fix the border so Congress could address the new threat, just as he promised his constituents he would. Yet Johnson did nothing about our border. He just pretended he had never made those promises and pushed ahead for Ukraine funding, throwing away whatever leverage he had with Democrats to help secure our border. It's actually worse than that. You see, Johnson didn't just fail to deliver on his repeated promises to secure the border before sending more aid to Ukraine, but his foreign aid package will make the border crisis worse. You see, included in the bill was roughly $4 billion for, quote, migration and refugee assistance, which is doled out to NGOs operating along the border and tasked with giving funds and travel assistance to those coming to the United States illegally and have been released from federal custody. In other words, Johnson isn't just neglecting the border crisis, he is actively funding it. By doing so, Johnson has managed to give Democrats exactly what they wanted on Ukraine and the border, while giving Republican voters nothing except a proverbial middle finger, especially since Johnson refuses even to acknowledge that he's changed his tune and gone back on his word. It's much more like that, or much more likely that this narrative about classified intel briefings swaying Johnson's view is just that, A ridiculous story cooked up by the permanent bureaucracy in D.C. and dutifully trotted out by the regime press to explain away Johnson's duplicity and make him look like a serious statesman. The simplest explanation for Johnson's duplicity, however, is not some secret briefing that's so terrifying that no one can know about it, but that Johnson is a feckless, easily manipulated creature of Washington who is wholly unprepared as Speaker to fight for Republican voters and serve their interests. And there are numerous voices of speculation as to why it was that some people believe that the very agencies that supposedly provided him with whatever revelations that none of us can know about but him, that caused him to change his mind, actually were providing him with information that they would reveal about him, that they have dirt on him. Now, there's no evidence of that other than a history of what we know from these agencies and the fact that there's no explanation that's provided that is a legitimate ethical explanation. It wasn't simply that Johnson said that he was against the funding altogether. He simply stated that we had to fix our border first. And not only did he not do that, but gave Democrats $4 billion to help facilitate illegal immigration into this country. And so once again, the question is, for the American citizen who expects politicians to keep their promises and wants a secure border, while the border continues to be the number one issue for Americans, which party are we supposed to support? Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly cloudy today, a high near 73. There's a 50% chance we'll see some rain throughout the night with a low of around 52. 80% chance tomorrow. Cooler, though, high of 61. And a 90% chance of showers and thunderstorms. Friday, kicking off the weekend with a high near 73. Attorney General of Missouri Andrew Bailey joins us, and I'd like to start off talking about a letter that you sent to Mayor Lucas of Kansas City, and this is something that we had talked about on the show subsequent to the mayor inviting the mayors of some of the other cities to send those illegals to Kansas City. What is just a head smacker in this one is the fact that like all of these other cities that are run by Democrats, things are chaotic. They're frantically trying to figure out what to do with these illegals because you have residents that are furious. You have kids that are being kicked out of school. You have visitors, tourists that are being kicked out of hotel rooms. It's just police being attacked in the street, and then the mayor of Kansas City says, "Oh yeah, no, we want some of that here." It is just mind-boggling how stupid this human being can be. You sent a letter to him, if you would talk about that.
Yeah, Nick. Well, this is an absolute clown show from city leadership in Kansas City. They want to turn Kansas City into a sanctuary city. Make no mistake about it. What he did was invite other cities to dump criminal aliens in Kansas City to take jobs away from Missourians. He should be ashamed of himself. It is amazing to me that anyone would cast a vote for Mayor Quinton Lucas after he undermines and attempts to violate the laws of the state of Missouri and actually harm the very constituents he's supposed to be serving. It's illegal to knowingly transport illegal aliens into or through the state of Missouri, and it is illegal for businesses to hire criminal aliens. So after we call him out on it, then he comes back and says, well, listen, those with work permits. Well, here's the problem. As Senator Hawley adeptly pointed out in his questioning of Secretary Mayorkas in the Senate hearings over the past 2 weeks, Biden is illegally giving parole to these people. They cross the border illegally. He slaps a parole label on them, hands them a work permit, and turns them loose. And then they do things like murder Lake and Riley. These are criminals who came here illegally. The last thing we need is them repopulating Kansas City, Missouri, and harming the citizens of Kansas City. At the most benign thing they could do, which is still terrible, would be taking jobs from Missourians. So we put the mayor on notice. We're going to enforce the laws, and I encourage everyone to sound off on this issue and tell Mayor Quinton Lucas that we do not want to support or be a part of this Biden invasion at the southern border.
You know, not to mention, and I know this is more political in nature, it doesn't say much for how you're running a city if you need jobs to be filled, that this is where you have to go to. You don't have a city that is welcoming or inviting enough to where just average Americans want to come there and work there and live there. I mean, that's usually what one would consider to be a sign of success. I mean, I know Florida and Texas, Tennessee, we've got a number of these states that they kind of brag about that. Look, hey, everyone's coming here. They're leaving blue states and they're coming here. That's a sign of success. That you have the mayor of a city that essentially is, in my assessment here, acknowledging that that city is a complete failure to where they have to try and take. Like it's not like these are coveted workers. I mean, his fellow Democrat mayors are desperately trying to get rid of him. That's where he's going in order to try to fix his problem. I mean, it just reflects what a sad state of affairs and an abysmal job that he and the other leadership in Kansas City is doing. So what realistically happens? Let's say that Mayor Lucas of Kansas City, he is listened to, and all of a sudden buses with these individuals start showing up and dropping off illegals in Kansas City. What happens?
Well, we'll file a lawsuit, and we'll investigate it as a criminal conspiracy as well, and we will go after any businesses that are hiring illegal aliens. We're not going to create or allow incentives for these violations of the laws of the state of Missouri. The General Assembly has enacted these statutes for a reason. They're to prevent human trafficking. They're to prevent smuggling. They're to prevent introduction of fentanyl into our state, which is killing 1,500 Missourians a year because of the Biden invasion at the southern border. And here Quinton Lucas is undermining those laws that the General Assembly has duly enacted in order to promote some kind of woke left-wing ideology. But, Nick, you've identified this in the past, and I think it really is telling, and I think you're spot on. The left is more concerned about this Potemkin Village woke utopia than practical good. You know, Republicans and Democrats used to believe in the same thing. We need to help and protect the people of our state. We just have different ways of getting there, different policy positions. But the left has rejected policy altogether. This isn't a policy. And it undermines, it directly contradicts the laws of the state of Missouri. This isn't a policy. This is some woke utopian dream of we're all going to sit here and sing Kumbaya with these illegal aliens, when in fact we know that they're killing people, introducing fentanyl and human trafficking into our state at a rate unprecedented. More criminal aliens have entered the United States under President Biden's watch than there are citizens in the state of Missouri. We know that Donald Trump reduced illegal border crossings by 90%. So the solutions to this problem are out there. The issue is that the left won't identify it as a problem in the first place.
We're talking with Attorney General Andrew Bailey. The judge had ordered Planned Parenthood hand over documents on transgender care for kids. Their response was no. What's the latest with this?
Yeah, we're continuing to fight them in court. We are legally entitled to continue our investigation into their mutilation and sterilization of children in the state of Missouri. Planned Parenthood has consistently put, again, a woke ideology ahead of the health and safety of patients. And we can demonstrate that through a history of evidence into this cult of death. And so we're continuing to pursue them in court. The law is on our side. The trial court ruled in our favor. Planned Parenthood has appealed, and we'll fight them. We'll keep fighting all the way to the highest court in the land if we have to. But we are going to obtain these documents and look back in time and figure out what went wrong here. And if there were people mutilating children without parental consent or cajoling parents into consent under duress, which is not real legal consent, we're going to hold them accountable.
Town Hall has a piece on this, and they note that Fox News noted that you and your office have won against 3 clinics, but there has been only one. Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City has actually handed over those documents. Has there been any opportunity, I'm not sure when those were handed over, to go through that to learn anything?
Yeah, let me speak. Yeah, well, because the investigation is ongoing,
right,
I'm somewhat limited. But let me say this, Nick, and this should surprise no one. But what we see is consistent with what happened in England. England went through this same thing 10, 15, 12 years ago, and they had one clinic that opened trying to treat gender dysphoria amongst youth, which are teens that come into these clinics and are confused about their gender. And what happened is, the clinic was quickly overwhelmed. And rather than resorting to traditional mental health services like psychology or psychiatry, the clinic started doling out dangerous, powerful puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, drugs that are untested in the treatment of gender dysphoria, certainly are not approved by the FDA for the treatment of gender dysphoria, and cause long-term, permanent, irreversible damage to the human body to the point that the children will never enjoy the full spectrum of adulthood. And my point is this: how dare anyone tell these kids God put them in the wrong body? We know he doesn't make mistakes. And in England, the clinic was so overwhelmed that you saw this exponential growth in the mutilization and sterilization of children by administration of these drugs and or irreversible surgeries. And pretty soon, regulators in England found out and shut it down. We're like, look, you are permanently harming and disfiguring a generation of children, and this is not backed up by medicine or science. The same thing is happening here in the United States of Missouri, or the United States of America, and I'm proud to say that Missouri led on this issue in so many different ways. I mean, as the national conversation on this issue peaked, we were in the heart of our investigation. We were in the heart of pushing this issue forward. Our General Assembly enacted a statute to prohibit these kinds of procedures moving forward, and we actually had the trial there in Springfield, in Greene County. After a 3-day trial, I'm proud to say that Missouri was the first state in the nation to successfully defend a statute prohibiting this kind of mutilation. We won at the trial court level, the first state to ever do that. So Missouri has led on this issue and will continue to do so.
And I know, of course, you are working on a number of different things, and we get updated on them periodically. Anything else that you are working on or will be working on that is of importance people should be aware of?
Nick, I'm also proud to say that Missouri is fighting back against this Biden invasion with 3 other lawsuits against the Biden administration. Number 1, to stop the kid release program. Number 2, to end this pernicious parole process. Parole is for individualized determinations. When an individual needs to show up, say, to testify against the cartel and needs to come into America, they're allowed on an individual basis for that limited purpose, and then they have to go home. But what Biden has done is blow open the parole exception and turn it into a visa program that was never authorized by Congress. So we've got a lawsuit. We're going to put a stop to it. And finally, our lawsuit to force President Biden to build Donald Trump's border wall, we won that lawsuit. And I'm so proud of the work that Missouri has done, leading the way, the first state in the nation to win one of these border lawsuits against the Biden administration to prevent him from wasting your and mine, your listeners' tax dollars, and force him to do his job and finish that border wall.
Well, so let me ask then, because you mentioned that was one, forcing him to. So what does that look like? What does that mean?
We have a trial court order. We're waiting to see if the Department of Justice appeals. I don't think they will. I think they know they're in the wrong. fiscal year 2020, the Congress appropriated money to build the border wall. President Biden came in and on day one signed an executive order saying, well, border walls don't work, which is ironic given that in 2006 he voted for the Secure Fence Act as a United States senator. But if he wasn't going to build the border wall, then he needed to go back to Congress and get the law changed. He never did. So he's under a congressional command to spend money to erect new border barrier systems. Instead, he was vexed, harassing, delaying that process, and wasting your tax dollars on endless environmental studies. This court order puts a stop to that. We're going to continue to push that lawsuit forward and obtain relief. We've got to build the border wall and go back to President Trump's immigration policies that we know work and protect Americans, protect Missourians, and put Americans first.
Attorney General Andrew Bailey, good to hear from you. Appreciate you being with us this morning.
Thanks, Nick. All the best to you and the listeners. Always great to talk to you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Have a great day. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Casting Crows to perform at Black Oak Amphitheater. Special guest Katie Nicole. That will be Thursday, September 12th. If you go to KSGF.com, you can register for your chance to win a pair of passes there. KSGF.com is also where, and the KSGF app also, where on Friday, 10 a.m., you can get a $50 gift certificate to Scramblers for $25. Those are limited in number. They will go very quickly. Scramblers, of course, where we will be doing the Friday Road Show, as we always do, sponsored by Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair. This Friday, Heroes Breakfast. So that means if you are a veteran, then you're going to get free breakfast thanks to Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Delta Roofing, Serenity Honors, and Scramblers. I know it's a lot of information for you. There you have it, my friends. There's a story in the news leader. SPS Teachers Union leader said principal attacked by student, quote, probably deserved it. And this is based off an email or a text message exchange that occurred that it actually had been sent to me. It was the day we were leaving for the Great Escape, and it clearly has been sent to other media outlets as well, hence the story in the news leader, which, best I can tell, they still haven't done a story. Do we know if they still not done a story on the allegations of kidnapping of a student by teachers?
So maybe email Claudette Riley and see.
Yeah, find out what the
what
latest is. Yeah, exactly what's going on with that. And a text message has been circulating on social media. The leader of Springfield's largest teachers union was asked if she knew that an elementary school principal was attacked by a fifth grader. Laura Mullins, president of the Springfield National Education Association, texted back, quote, no, but she probably deserved it because she refuses to send kids home that shouldn't be at school. The March 28th text exchange between Mullins and Lynette Wright, the cafeteria supervisor at Watkins Elementary, where the alleged assault took place, was made public April 19th. Wright said, I in no way, shape, or form condone any type of violence against anyone. With that being said, this was the president of the local union here in Springfield who represents our coworkers. This is unacceptable. This was an email she sent to the school board. Wright, the recipient of the text message, saying there's no room for this type of behavior by someone in her position or anyone else. In the email to the board and in multiple posts on social media, Wright called for Mullins to resign, saying there's no excuse for this behavior. She can try and defend this or change the narrative any way she wants, but she needs to be accountable for her actions, and she needs to resign immediately, Wright wrote in an email, saying this behavior is probably the biggest reason higher administration will not work with her, as she has burned those bridges down. The news leader reached out to Mullins, who confirmed, yeah, she sent the text, saying it was a personal conversation, saying I was answering quickly. I could have used better words, I'm sure. Ask what, but she probably deserved it meant. Mullins said, when you create an environment where student violence comes without consequences and you engage with a student who's violent, that is an expected risk that an administrator takes. Now, we'll post this story, and the story goes into sort of accusations about potentially bad blood between Wright, who was a recipient of the text message, and you know, sort of attributing the release of that to vengeance against Mullins and so forth. But while that isn't necessarily insignificant, I don't think that's the point here. Now, we can, I think, have discussions as to whether that was an appropriate response. I'm sure in retrospect, given that it was put out there in the public, Mullins probably wishes I hadn't, you know, that she had not sent that text to that particular person. I think, you know, offshoot here is there's a lesson to be learned that don't ever text or put anything in print without assuming that it's going to be put out in public. And I know sometimes there are people that you trust, you think that they won't release it, but you just never know what's going to happen, or somebody else could get a hold of it. This is why when I, for example, threaten to burn someone's house down, I lean over and I whisper it in their ear. That's what you're supposed to do. No proof. To me, though, there's a much, much larger problem here, and we've got to get a traffic update, and then I want to address that because I feel as if what's happening here is what is become the story isn't really ultimately the story. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. There's a news leader article. SPS Teachers Union leader said principal attacked by student probably deserved it. And this whole story stemmed from a text message from someone named Lynette Wright. She's a cafeteria supervisor at Watkins Elementary, and texted Laura Mullins, president of the Springfield National Education Association, saying, hey, did you hear that this student attacked the principal? And the response from Lauren Mullins was, well, she, probably deserved it. Quote, no, but she probably deserved it because she refuses to send kids home that shouldn't be at school. And this resulted in Wright posting on social media and then going to the school board and saying that, Lauren Mullins shouldn't be in the positions she's in and so forth. Not that I don't think the school board has anything to do with that. The teachers vote, or those that are in the union vote for that individual. But I can tell you exactly, without having conversations with these people, but just being an observer, what this comment's about, whether it was an appropriate comment to make or otherwise. What has been a long, very frustrating concern for many teachers and employees of the school district is they feel as if they are being forced to deal with students who should not be in the classroom because principals in certain schools and administrators refuse to discipline in a way that allows the teachers to be safe. This is why Mullins and some of those within the union actually held a protest outside one of the school board meetings at one point because they're so frustrated that the problem is not being addressed while they're being told it is being addressed. And what I suspect, and what the article in the news leader suggests here, is that one of the administrators who is seen as facilitating this continued problem is the principal that got attacked by a student. And the response was one that would be similar to somebody that who's a Joe Biden supporter and they lost their job because of the economy. And you're like, well, they voted for Biden. And that this response, whether, again, it was appropriate given her position or not, she did believe it was a private conversation. My inference here is, well, when you create an environment that facilitates this sort of behavior, it's going to be sometimes difficult to avoid becoming a victim yourself in these situations. So I understand the perspective and the frustration totally. I suspect many teachers do as well. Professor who led pro-Jewish rally barred from campus at Columbia. Well, that sounds about right. Why don't they just go? 1938 all over again. I mean, more and more you're hearing. Got an article of a gal who was a survivor of a concentration camp. We've got numerous employees that are Jewish that work on these campuses. At 1930, this is. Listen. I'm sorry. This is what the Democrats have brought us. I mean, we're going to talk about some of the latest on this, but it's just remarkable. I remember when Trump was president, and there was a conversation going on with someone that I've known for a very long time. She's a lefty. And evidently, I didn't know it until she made this comment. She's half Jewish. And despite Trump being the most pro-Israel president that we've ever seen, in actual meaningful ways, not rhetoric, but meaningful ways, and having Jewish family members, because of the disinformation spread by the media, she believed that she was actually in danger as a Jew in this country, saying that as somebody who's half Jewish, it makes me nervous having him as president. Now, I didn't even bother engaging in discussion, but just had no desire to on it. And you think about and reflect on the disinformation that was put out there about Trump and about conservatives and anti-Semitism, and look at what we're dealing with today. These events are not happening at CPAC conventions. These protests calling for the elimination of Jews aren't happening at college Republican headquarters. These are all left-wingers. The reason, if you notice, they continue to, there were some that were protesting outside Chuck Schumer's home. They're targeting Democrats because they know there's no point in targeting Republicans with this stuff. Because they know where Republicans stand. They know there is no sympathy amongst Republicans for terrorism. There's no sympathy amongst Republicans for anti-Semitism. So that they don't even bother, Now, they may here and there, like there was down in Texas, if you've got some local situations, there was a congressman that had fake blood, I guess it was fake, thrown on his door. Maybe it was I don't even know what his position was. So, I mean, you will have some of these rare instances, but these high-profile situations, the protest at Joe Biden events, Kamala Harris events, Hillary Clinton events, increasingly there are these agitators that show up, they scream, they yell, they protest, and the target are always Democrats because they know they're the ones that they're most angry at because they're part of the same, quote, family, if you will, and they know that they're the ones that they can win over, that they can use. And part of the reason they know that is because that's exactly what the Biden administration has done. They are the lobbying wing on the international stage for Hamas. Hamas wants a ceasefire. Biden's right there to demand a ceasefire. Hamas wants Israel to, halt actions in one particular area for a few hours so that aid can get in. And, I mean, of course, that's how it masquerades, and Biden jumps right in to do it. I mean, this administration is the agency for all that Hamas wants. And it's very telling that the nasty, vile calls of violence are in the hotbeds of liberalism in this country. College campuses, culturally speaking, you cannot get more of a Democrat culture than you do on a college campus. And this is where it's happening. Oh, but Donald Trump. Oh, yes. He's the one that the Jewish people need to be afraid of. No, there's an actual town that changed its name in honor of Trump in Israel while he was president of the United States as a thank you for being the most pro-Jewish, pro-Israeli president in the history of the existence of Israel in terms of actual meaningful action. This world that the unethical and immoral, and in many instances evil, people have made in the media and in the Democrat Party and in pop culture oftentimes, has crafted this world where somehow you have the most anti-Semitic president that we've seen in modern history, and perhaps in the existence of during the existence of Israel itself, is somehow able to stand up at a State of the Union address and proclaim he's the most pro-Israeli president ever, and have a significant segment of the population believe it. Now, I think that's changing. This is why it's so problematic for the Democrats right now, because, of course, they are trying to figure out how is it that we don't lose average Americans and expose ourselves as being anti-Semitic, but they also don't want to lose the anti-Semitic wing of their party. They've created a bit of a problem for themselves here. We're going to get a look at the weather in a moment. Right now, the latest news update. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49. Meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly cloudy today, a high near 73. 50% chance of rain throughout tonight with a low of around 52. Tomorrow, an 80% chance of showers and storms, 61 for a high. And Friday, 90% chance of showers, storms, high of 73. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Quick Draw Gun in Monette. You'll find their shop right off 60. It's an easy hour drive down there. And one thing that you're going to experience with Quick Draw Gun in Monette is their top-notch customer service. They're not pushy. They don't try to sell you what they want to sell. They actually take the time to listen to you. And, of course, they answer all of your questions as well. They're my go-to gun shop for a lot of reasons, but honestly, that customer service is really what sets them apart. That, and they are always expanding and adding new products to their store so they can always serve you better as a customer. Now, Brad, I know he just added about 5 or 6 new names around the shop, and they got a new shipment of Benelli firearms in. So if that's something that you have been looking to add to your collection, recommend that you take a trip down there. And in the meantime, if you do have any questions or if you're looking for a specific accessory or a firearm, go ahead and give Brad and his team a call today. You can find all of that contact information for Quick Draw Gun in Monette under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
If you don't have the app, recommend you download it. The KSGF app, easy to contact the studio by way of the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line that way. Also keep up to date with what's going on, including contests like your chance to win tickets to see Casting Crowns with special guest Kathy Nicole at the Black Oak Amphitheater. That performance concert will be Thursday, September 12th, and you can use the app or, again, ksgf.com in order to register for your chance to win tickets for that. Also, while you're there, ksgf.com, you can see the latest Nick and Cole's Fido Friends, along with Nicole Brock, American Family Insurance, the Humane Society of Southwest Missouri. Every week, we introduce a new pet, a new dog that needs adopted. And in fact, we'll have a new video up today. We didn't have one last week because, of course, we were in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. And don't forget, sign up for Godfather's Pizza Party. And with the app, you get a notification on Fridays as to a Godfather's deal that will be good for that Friday evening at their 4 store locations, Nixa, Ozark, Battlefield, and Springfield. It's just some of what you can find at ksgf.com. and the KSGF app. Speaking of the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line, we go to Walter. Walter, welcome to the show.
Yes, the reason our country is being destroyed, and it is being destroyed, is people aren't told the truth, and we don't confront people that are absolutely criminally insane. Anyone that supports Hamas, anyone, should be re-educated, shown all the videos of what Hamas did on October 7th. You do know about the videos, not just of the Israeli military and the stuff they found, but the videos of the terrorists they captured. They videotaped horrible, terrible things. And I just wonder, why does the media not present the facts? There was one gentleman that wrote a report after seeing one of the videos that the Israelis released and crying, and he wrote an article about the beheading of babies. He had to retract the article about beheading of babies because, sure, the kids were missing their heads. But how do you know they were beheaded? How do you know they didn't just fall off? How do you know it wasn't an industrial accident? And on and on and on. All kinds of excuses for these terrorists. And, just simple things. You had a discussion this morning on transgender people. If you sent me to the store to buy you a Granny Smith apple, and I kept on bringing you back lemons because I thought a lemon was a Granny Smith apple, you would question my sanity. Somebody that is a male that thinks they are something other than what they are is insane. The cartoon Tooter the Turtle told us these lessons. Be just what you is and not what you's not. Folks who do this are the happiest lot. This society is insane for not telling the truth. Hamas are psychopathic murders that should be annihilated immediately, and we've let them into our universities and our country. Yeah, anyone that supports Hamas should be arrested and imprisoned today, not tomorrow, today.
Well, and I want to focus on the Hamas component to this. And there's oftentimes a contradiction in approach and perhaps even understanding of approach between organizations like Hamas and Americans, Democrats, left-leaners who are sympathetic with Hamas. What they attempt to do And this is how the mind works of some of these people, and even Biden saying, "Well, yeah, of course I condemn calls to eliminate Jews, but I also condemn people who don't understand that perspective. The perspective of those who want the Jews eliminated." They have sympathy for the cause of Hamas. In their minds, they tell themselves that the way that Hamas is going about it is distracting from the greater good, and so that's why they don't want to cover it, because you may misunderstand Hamas's goals. That's what they convince themselves. The conflict that they find themselves, though, is that Hamas wants people to know they do this stuff. Hamas is very proud of these things. And you continue to see them becoming more and more comfortable vocalizing this. Just this morning, you have students on the campuses, on some of these campuses, and Columbia is getting a great deal of the attention here, that are chanting, "Burn in hell, Israel." They are, what is some of the... I've got a number of different stories here in which they are saying we are Hamas. And this is also problematic for the Democrats and the media, because the media has been trying to claim for so long, no, they're not supporting Hamas, they're supporting the Palestinians. This is what we have continued to hear since the attack was launched. No. Oh, there's a difference here, Hamas, oh yes, they're bad. No. These students, these left-wing activists, they're supporting the Palestinian people. And what is happening is, I think that there's frustration on behalf of these, quote, protesters, because no, they are supporters of Hamas. So they're out there saying, we are Hamas. This is not about the Palestinian people. We are Hamas. We're not here as Palestinians. We're not here saying, no, yes, Hamas is bad. It's the Palestinians we're focusing on. They are chanting, we are Hamas. They are out there. Talking about how that October 7th wasn't the end. It is the beginning. This is in the United States of America. They're openly declaring that they are going to, do this stuff. You juxtapose it. There's a story that ozarksfirst.com, color 10. West Plains 12-year-old arrested for terroristic threat at middle school. 12-year-old from Howell County has been arrested and charged with first-degree terroristic threats. According to Howell County Sheriff's Office, investigators received a tip that the boy was telling other students at the West Plains Middle School he had a gun in his backpack. When searched, there was no firearm in his backpack. Investigators, what they found is that the 12-year-old had not come to school, but he sent a Snapchat to some other student containing a photo of a firearm. And so officers went to the 12-year-old's home and arrested him for making terroristic threats. And during the arrest, the boy's mother and grandmother resisted cooperation with the officers, so the boy's mother was arrested on an outstanding warrant, and the grandmother was arrested for interfering with law enforcement. Now, the point here isn't whether or not this was an overreaction, an underreaction, or an appropriate reaction. But once again, it's the compare and contrast. We live in a country where if you're a 12-year-old and through Snapchat you send a picture of a gun, and that ends up translating to somebody calling law enforcement and saying that the boy was telling other students that he was going to, that he had a gun in his backpack when he wasn't even at school. So it sounds as if there's some misunderstanding here. Not that he should have done it anyhow, but he's arrested for terroristic threats. Meanwhile, you have across this country thousands of suicide bomber-aged individuals that are openly calling for terrorism, that are calling for the elimination of Jews and our own country in many instances. And those individuals, they only get arrested if it becomes so physical, they get physical with law enforcement that, that they arrest them. But then they don't get charged with terroristic threats. They get turned out the next day, if not that same day. These universities and these cities that are run by Democrats, they take a knee to this stuff. So explain that. And a lot of it is identity politics, of course. These people are anti-Semitic, so making terrorist threats are okay. Now, here's one for you. Figure this one out, because you know it's true. So, they had set a deadline. They've allowed these terrorists, supporters of terrorism, to set up camp at Columbia University. They just allowed them to do it. And they gave them a deadline. And they didn't. They're like, no, we're not going to. So they took a knee and said, well, okay, we'll extend the deadline for you. They announced on Tuesday it was in discussions with encampment organizers. Other words, terrorist sympathizing organizers, terrorist promoting sympathizers, to establish a deadline. So they're negotiating with them. Now, these are unapologetically anti-Semitic individuals. If these were white students that identified as members of the Klan and Aryan Nation, and they were doing the exact same thing, calling for the elimination of Jews, do you think that Columbia University would be taking a knee to them? Do you think Columbia University would allow them to set up camp? Of course not. They would have them out of there so stinking fast. Now, think about that mindset. See, the reality here, it isn't about, they don't care about Jews. They don't care whether or not Jews are threatened or eliminated. And this is typical for the left. They never care about a cause unless that cause can be used against their political enemy. That's all. So you can have two groups of people. If you had white, right wing, as they would see them, individuals that were members of the Klan, and I know the Klan, it's a Democrat, historically Democrat thing, but just talking about the stereotype that they've created. You've got a bunch of white individuals that are conservatives, and if they were calling for genocide and the elimination of Jews and more October 7th, and they try to set up camp, they would never be allowed to do that. But if you're a bunch of left-wingers doing it, well, we got to try to figure out how it is that we can all come to an agreement here. Think about how twisted the minds of these people have to be, that that calling for the elimination of an entire grouping of people, the evil level shifts depending on who's doing it. We got a call for genocide. Well, okay. Well, who's calling for it? Well, this group over here. Oh, well, we got to understand their perspective here. I mean, even Biden says that we've got to understand where they're coming from. There is no moral compass culturally in our country as a whole any longer. It is gone. When you can, and what is so scary and so frightening, you think about all the tens or hundreds of thousands of students that are indoctrinated on these campuses every single day. And the real gas of it all is that people pay tens of thousands of dollars to have their children indoctrinated in these cultures of hatred. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Talk and text line 447 KSGF to there in moments. First, traffic. I'm Nick Reed. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals from Color 10, Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly cloudy, 73 for a high today, 50% chance for rain throughout the night tonight, 52 for a low, and 80% chance of showers, storms. Tomorrow, high near 61, 90% chance of showers and storms Friday, high near 73. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. We go to Rufus. Welcome to the show, Rufus.
Hey, Nick Reed.
Yes.
You know, he was a Democrat, probably the last good Democrat. He had helped start the land of Israel in '48, and he's my favorite president. One of them. Of course, you never heard of a Shrine Mason hating Jews. Ever since then, the Democrats have done nothing but elect intellectually challenged Dale Cavities. And I think it's disgraceful the way they keep wanting to Schumer. You know, I don't know. He sounds like he might be Jewish himself. Why would he be called?
Yeah. Well, I tell you that's a good question, and he is Jewish. Mark Levin has mentioned this on numerous occasions. There is a difference. I'm trying to think between being a religious Jew versus I think they say a national one. So there's a difference between somebody who is born in Israel and is Jewish or has Jewish heritage versus someone who observes as an actual religion. That those are two very different things. He said, and I think Mark Levin he may be Jewish as well, or I know there's some background there. And I think there is definite truth to that difference between culturally and religiously. And so for somebody like, well, look, maybe to put it in terms that can be better understood by people who aren't Jewish, it's like, Joe Biden, he claims he's an observant that he's just a dedicated Catholic. Now, I suspect that many people who really truly are dedicated Catholics look at that and say, no. Look at the way that Catholics have been treated under the Biden administration. The FBI has infiltrated Catholic Church, and Biden's Catholic. So while we look at a scenario in which there are who are antagonistic towards the people of that faith, we scratch our heads and say, why on earth would Jewish people support? Well, why would Catholics support Joe Biden? They do. Some do. I mean, clearly not all, and I don't know what the breakdown is, but they do. I suspect that again, those who are very adherent to the faith of Catholicism, they don't see, though, Joe Biden as really, truly Catholic. Though Catholic and a Cano, Catholic or a Sino, Catholic in name only. And so when you realize the hostility toward, or just even Christians in this country, the hostility towards Christians by a president who claims to be Christian, and the fact that there are still people who are Christian who will support him, it makes it a little easier, I suppose, or to maybe not to understand, but maybe there's some reflection there. We're like, oh, well, wait a minute. I guess we do that too in this country. It's a great question, and I think it's one that is much closer to home than we think that it actually may be. I wanted to, and I've got to play some audio from Christopher Wray, acting FBI director, who has declared that all of these so-called protests that are occurring, in which there's call for intifada, call for more October 7th, that's not anything that's of interest to the FBI. Oh, that sort of thing, that's not of any interest to them. The federal, before that audio, the Federalist, Brianna Lyman has a piece. FBI won't say if investigating self-declared Hamas terrorists, whether they're even investigating some of the individuals that are openly saying, I am Hamas terrorist. Because, they're too busy investigating parents who go to school board meetings or Catholics. The Federal Bureau of Investigation would not say yesterday whether it is investigating people who have identified themselves as part of a foreign terrorist organization heard chanting, "We are Hamas," outside universities, including Columbia. Video footage showed masked Islamists taunting Jewish students outside of President Barack Obama's alma mater. Couldn't be a better place for it. One woman shouted at a pro-Israeli activist, quote, "We are Hamas," while standing outside Columbia University. "We're all Hamas." Another man who covered his face was seen on video promising more mass slaughter, more rape, and more kidnapping, saying, quote, "Remember the 7th of October. That will happen not one more time, not 5 more times, to 10 more times, not 100 more times, not 1,000 more times, but 10,000 times. Never forget the 7th of October, another unidentifiable man donning the Palestinian flag outside the university screams in a video recording. Are you ready? 7th of October is about to be every day. Every day, 7th of October is going to be every day for you. The Federalist reached out to the FBI asking, whether they're looking into these people. Quote, "Thank you for your inquiry. However, we decline comment on this matter." Well, sure. Because this is an FBI who has made it very clear that Christian nationalists are the major concern in this country. That white nationalists, that's where the real danger is. All of this stuff, the open promises of more terrorist attacks, and here in the United States, no, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Because there are a bunch of white guys getting together, meeting, talking about Make America Great Again. There are parents showing up at school board meetings. Now, that's where we got to prioritize. Now, just so there's no mistake about it, the FBI itself designates Hamas as a terrorist organization. They're also too busy arresting grandmothers who pray outside abortion clinics, making sure that they go to prison for praying. This is the country we live in. That if some of these, and there are numerous people that this administration has put in prison for years because they've prayed outside abortion clinics, if those individuals instead had gone and intimidated Jews, screaming at them, "We are going to murder you and eliminate you," that the FBI would have no interest in. The Federalist notes perhaps the FBI's unwillingness to let the American people know that it's monitoring self-proclaimed terrorists is because the agency allegedly trained some of its personnel using material that ranked people who oppose abortion, people that are pro-life, as a greater threat than Islamic terrorists. This according to former Special Agent Stephen Friend. Friend said that he received the training material in 2014. He was unsure whether the agency still used those materials. The materials that he was provided as an FBI agent were produced by the Southern Poverty Law Center, which, by the way, is oftentimes cited by the Springfield news leader as an expert when it comes to hate and who is a hate group and who isn't a hate group. The Southern Poverty Law Center is the group whose materials inspired a gunman to shoot up the offices of a conservative D.C. organization in 2012 and another gunman to attempt to murder a member of Congress in 2017. And we know this because they said that's the organization they got their list from. But let's, news leader, don't stop using them as a source. As of 2023, the FBI still uses some of the Southern Poverty Law Center materials. SPLS responded to the October 7th terrorist attack in Israel by claiming that while all acts of hate, violence are wrong, Israel's the one who's targeting Palestinian civilians, and of course that is they're using the talking points of Hamas. The FBI also used the SPLC, citing them in a 2023 document targeting Christians who opposed abortion and holding orthodox views about the sexes, labeling them radically or ethically motivated violent extremists, and even suggested cultivating FBI informants within local churches. The FBI has also smeared Americans who support former President Donald Trump as potential terrorists by including them in their domestic extremism definition. According to a 2023 report from Newsweek, Newsweek found, quote, nearly two-thirds of the FBI's current investigations focus on Trump supporters who allegedly disregard anti-riot laws. Two-thirds of current FBI investigations are of Trump supporters, according to that 2023 report. Of course, as of January 6, 2021, the agency also expanded its anti-government or anti-authority violent extremist other classifications so it could monitor anyone who disagrees with any government action. A 2021 Inspector General report found that several FBI officials lied to cover up agency errors and dinged the agency for its systemic lack of rapid investigation of later convicted child sex abuser Larry Nassar, of which, by the way, they just settled for I forget how many millions of dollars because of their quote investigation into him and essentially allowing him to continue to molest young girls for years after they were informed about it. I mean, this is an FBI in their official manuals, their official, books. List Trump supporters, list pro-life individuals, list traditional Christians as extremists, as potential domestic terrorists. Meanwhile, when you have people who are openly identifying with an official terrorist organization and the FBI's asked about it, well, Acting FBI Director Wray was asked specifically about this yesterday.
There's an environment right now we're seeing play out on some college campuses, the protests over what's happening in Gaza. Are you watching that warily?
Well, of course, demonstrations themselves are not something that we, the FBI, get involved in. But when violence ensues, that's when we get concerned, when you have threats of violence. And so we have seen Even before October 7th, we saw a significant increase, especially in anti-Semitic threats and anti-Semitic violence.
Are you actively monitoring these protests?
We don't monitor protests, but we do share intelligence about specific threats of violence.
Yeah, well, no. I mean, if there's some specific, how much more specific can they get? They're specifically saying they're going to specifically kill specifically Jews. And they specifically want Israel to be wiped off the map. And they specifically want the United States, as it exists, to be wiped off the map. What sort of specificity is Ray looking for? I also love, he's like, oh, when it comes to demonstrations, no, we're hands off. Oh, really? How many undercover FBI agents were there on January 6th? How many undercover FBI? At one point, there were so many undercover FBI agents that they had to coordinate the different divisions. They couldn't keep count of how many there were. They literally lost count by their own acknowledgement. So if you are a Trump supporter, not only do they monitor events, and it wasn't just January 6th. There were numerous events. Well, I think it was the year after, and Trump supporters were told just don't go to this event. They're going to be undercover FBI agents, and just mocking the agency. There were these photos of these individuals that were clearly federal agents. I mean, they look like federal agents, and it became a source of mockery because they were not only, quote, monitoring protest, but they had infiltrated them. Unless you're Hamas, calling for the elimination of Jews in the United States. Then the FBI apparently, we got bigger things to worry about. But don't worry. If we get any sort of info that they're going to do, we'll share that information. Who are you going to share it with? You're going to share it with the campus cops? I've never seen, well, certainly not this country, but any country that is almost welcoming the sort of attack that Israel went through on October 7th. I mean, the welcome mat is being laid out. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Someone was asking the question that called in, how is it that people like Chuck Schumer who are Jewish can be so anti-Jewish? And to make it more relatable, look how many people who are, quote, Christian that support Joe Biden, who says he's a Christian. And so we do that too. And I noted that Mark Levin, he's really talked about a distinction there. And I want to thank Brett for texting in that the distinction that Levin makes is Jewish by race versus religion, and that those are two very separate things. And I think that there is, there's extreme fundamental truth to that. I know we just took a break, but I want to take just one last 90-second break because there was a question that was also asked that I think is a very, very, very important question with a very important answer. And the question is, who's paying these people? Who's paying for these protests? And I think that the answer might ultimately be a surprise to a lot of people, but it's an important question to ask and an answer to know that 90 seconds. The terrorists, and I'm calling these folks, these protesters on the campus terrorists because they are self-proclaiming to be terrorists. They're saying we are Hamas. I think we need to be very clear about this. You call them terrorists, and there are going to be a lot of people, they're not, how dare you call them terrorists? They're calling themselves terrorists. Hamas is a terrorist organization. I don't think there's anyone who disagrees with that. The FBI has declared, everyone knows they are Hamas organization. When you have people that are saying, yes, we are Hamas, they are declaring themselves as terrorists. These are terrorists. Someone had asked the question, who's paying for this? And I've seen some shots of the encampments where Colombia, for example, is allowing the terrorists just to set up a camp there, and all the tents look alike. And so, the suggestion is that all this is being coordinated. I think that there is the opportunity here to really misunderstand the root of this. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't some coordination that is occurring, but it is a coordination occurring after the masses are already there. Black Lives Matter, for example. There were all sorts of stories of buses, people being shipped in, people, being paid and so forth. And there was a great deal of coordination that did occur. While you did have some local people in those areas that were more than willing to go out and riot, you did have some organic component to it. There was the proactive effort by coordinators to expand on it, to make the movement bigger. The size of this so-called movement is not coordinated. Now, I believe that there are attempts to coordinate the masses that are already there. And the point here is, and this is why this is not going to go away, these are not virtue signalers. These are not individuals that otherwise would be, at home or doing something else, but a friend of theirs said, hey, you want to go cause trouble? These are people that are fueled by hate. These are people that after years of indoctrination of diversity, equity, and inclusion, being told that there are oppressors and oppressed, who see this vast injustice because the Jews are the oppressor, and the terrorists are the oppressed, that they are in, this is them. These aren't outside observers. These are people who are true believers of the cause. And so while there could very well be coordination, like in terms of, we're going to set up camp here and there, the number of people involved, that is organic. These people have been cultivated through largely our public schools and our universities and pop culture and any and everywhere this DEI stuff exists, where there's the hierarchy of oppressed and oppression. That has been ingrained in them from a young age. And that's how it's been done in the Middle East for generations. It's why there are such deep divisions and hatred for the Jews there, and it's why we are seeing it here. And it's why also, if the Democrats are hoping that this just, quote, goes away, and by the time the convention comes around in Chicago, this is something that all of these activists are not going to be interested in any longer, they are vastly miscalculating, I believe, what's going on. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed. Talk to you tomorrow.